Oh, there we go. I hit the recording button. All right, I'll say that again. Welcome, everyone. My name is Haytha Forsyth. I am the program manager here at U-Turn Parkinson's. We're very pleased to have you join us for our very first educational event, Nutrition and Parkinson's. Joining us today is registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator Dawne Lachapelle. Before we have her take over, we're just going to let our general manager, Taylor, say a few words and let you know a little more about who we are and what we do. So I'm going to have her come on right now. Just one moment. All right.
There we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here to attend our first ever education event. We're really trying to kind of get the ball rolling here and hopefully continue to offer some more educational and insightful sessions. But we really wanted to do the first one this week to celebrate World Parkinson's Awareness Day, which was Monday, and celebrate Parkinson's Awareness Month this month. So yes, as Haytha mentioned, my name is Taylor Devlin. I am the general manager, wearer of many hats at U-Turn Parkinson's. And we wanted to take a moment before we let Dawne take over to introduce the program and our organization to a few new faces today. So a little bit about U-Turn Parkinson's. We are currently Manitoba's only charitable wellness center dedicated entirely to Parkinson's wellness. The organization was founded in 2016 by a fellow person living with Parkinson's disease and a retired nurse. And our organization is really run and facilitated by some really highly trained staff and professionals who are here to support you and empower you in your pursuit of wellness. All of our programs and therapeutic services are available for anyone diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and their caregivers free of charge. So, as I mentioned, all of U-Turn Parkinson's programs are tailored specifically for people living with Parkinson's disease, and our diverse programming offered in person, online, and on demand is all free of charge. A few of our key programs I wanted to mention today are our Rock Steady Boxing program, which is quite popular and offered multiple times per week. Our U-Tunes program, which is a therapeutic and rehabilitative singing and music program. Our new Power Stretch class, which is offered online right now, and we're contemplating moving in person as well, which focuses a lot on core work, on range of movement, stretching, and balance. And our Empower You online class, which I know quite a few of the people attending today participate in, which is our online full body weight exercise program. And lastly, another one I wanted to mention is our Meet for Coffee support group, which is facilitated fully online right now. So if you are already a member of the community and are interested in trying out one of our new programs, either in person or online, or you're a new face to us today and think, hey, you know what, this organization sounds wonderful and I'm interested in getting more involved, you are more than welcome to visit us on our website at uturnparkinsons.org or contact us at our phone number or email address on the screen. And Haytha will follow up after the presentation today with some more contact information if you'd like to get more involved.
Thank you, Taylor. All right, so now we're just going to get to the meat and potatoes, haha, nutrition joke of the day. So I'm very pleased to introduce you to Dawne Lachapelle, registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator here in Winnipeg as part of the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority. I know she's going to give you a great presentation, give you a lot of information that I hope is very helpful for you. She also happens to be my best friend. So without further ado, I'm going to get her going here and we'll be off to the races. Here we go. All the behind the scenes things I got to click and unclick. Here we go.
All right, thank you for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. I was really excited to get this invitation to work with this really great organization and have a chance to provide hopefully some information to everybody today that's going to be helpful to them and relevant to questions that you might have. I think we'll maybe just quickly touch on how we're going to cover questions in the presentation, hey? So correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, but I think that what we're going to try and do is save questions for the end. There will be time set aside for answering questions that you have. So we'll go through the material, the formal material of the presentation first, but it sounds like the chat function is the best way to enter your questions in, just because there are a lot of people who are, registered. So it'll be a little bit easier to make sure we're addressing everybody's questions if they're coming in through the chat. So that was our plan for that. And then just so you know as well, I know we're having some pretty wild weather today, at least in Winnipeg, maybe not in other places. I know people are logging in from other provinces. But if you find that my audio or the visuals for the presentation are getting glitchy, something that might help you is to turn off your camera, because then that will free up internet bandwidth so that there's more of your internet connection is free for the incoming material. So just so you know about that, I like to see people, and I'm happy to see some friendly faces here watching the presentation. But if you find that it's interfering with the quality of the presentation itself, then that's an option that you have to try and have it go better. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started and share some slides with you. So hopefully that is showing up well. It looks like it's going fine from my end. So when I'm just going to go over a little bit of information about what we're going to do today. So we're going to start a little bit with just a brief introduction for how nutrition supports wellness. I mean, I think we all know that people need to have nutrients to be able to stay healthy, but there's actually a lot more things that food can do for us. And I think it actually matches up well with the mission that U-Turn has as well for trying to support wellness in people who live with Parkinson's. Next, we're gonna talk about how living with PD presents unique nutritional challenges. So within that, I focused on a few topics today. I know that there are more that people may have questions about, and I'm happy to try and field any questions that come up. But the focus of our presentation today, to try and include everybody in common concerns, would be how to get enough energy and protein in your diet, some of the eating difficulties and digestive issues that people with Parkinson's can frequently run into. So specifically, we'll be talking about constipation and swallowing difficulties. Next, we'll discuss some information about how to protect your bone density. Then we'll touch on how partners and caregivers can help. I know that there's lots of partners and caregivers that are involved in the organization as well. So a little bit of information there. Then Annika, the dietitian intern who is working with me, is going to take over and take you through some label reading information for how to look at products when you're in the grocery store and compare them. And then we'll finish off with some information about when you should consider seeing a dietitian, and then some information about how you may access one. And I've tried to include a little bit of information even for the people out of province. So hopefully that kind of covers everybody. If there are other provinces that have logged on, I know today I'm including information about Manitoba, Quebec, and Ontario. If there are others, then maybe that could come through as a chat question, and I could try to help with that as well. And then we'll finish off with some good time for questions. So feel free to share your questions. If you have a question, chances are there are other people who have logged on who have the same question as you. So really don't be shy. There are no bad questions. So I'm happy to try and field anything that comes up. Okay, so when I was preparing for this presentation, I was trying to learn more about U-Turn, and I came across this really nice diagram about how U-Turn is trying to support wellness in people. And this is the way I think of wellness as well as a dietitian. So it's a lot more than just kind of, the basics for physical health, right? Our wellness comprises many aspects, including our emotional health, our intellectual health, social, physical, spiritual, and occupational health. So I think that gives a really nice comprehensive view of the different dimensions of wellness that people that really contribute to a person being able to live the life that they want and pursue their goals. So today, in terms of how nutrition can support wellness, I focused on 3 main areas. So first of all, the physical aspect of it, which I think a lot of us kind of were expecting, right? So we need to give our bodies the nutrients that it needs to stay healthy. But food is more than just nutrients. There is a social aspect to eating as well. And so part of the material today, part of what I'll be talking about is that eating with other people is a part of every culture in the world, and it's very, very important. It promotes good mental health and healthy social relationships. So that is definitely an aspect of nutrition that's very, very important to me, and that I think is worthwhile keeping in mind when you're thinking about your wellness as you go through life. And then finally, the emotional side of things. So cooking and eating food is part of our life story, and it can keep us connected to our family, our friends, and our culture. And so I know that living with PD can present challenges with how we eat, how we digest food, and there may need to be changes to dishes that you have traditionally always liked. And it's just important to realize that that is part of our emotional well-being, and that it can be worth it to try and troubleshoot some of the issues that come up so that you can still feel that you're really engaging with these other important aspects of your life and not just getting the nutrients that your body needs. So again, I know that the condition is very, everybody's health is individual, right? And people all have different challenges that they deal with. So that's why I'm going to share some information towards the end about how you can access dietitian services so that you can try to integrate all of this into your own lifestyle if that's something that you want to talk about after today's presentation. So let's move on to the first section of the presentation about getting enough energy and protein. So why are we concerned about this for people living with PD? There are different reasons why it can be difficult for people with PD to get enough physical energy into their body. So for number one is that when you have involuntary movements, you can end up burning a lot more energy than other people that are the same age and weight as you. So it can alter your metabolism. These involuntary movements can use a lot of energy. So over time, if the person is having difficulty, they may actually need to eat more than another person to be able to maintain the same weight. And so if that's something that is a challenge for people, then it can involve people losing weight, even though they don't intend to, and even though they're eating regularly throughout the day. So we'll talk more about that as we go forward. It can also be challenging to regain lost weight. So if you can imagine, if a person's body is burning more energy all the time, and then that results in them losing weight, even if they start, really trying to eat more, they may have to be really careful about what choices that they make to try and actually make up for the fact that they've lost weight already. So they may need to try and regain some of that weight if that's impacting their energy or their ability to participate in their daily living. But it can be difficult to regain it because their metabolism is also faster than it was at a previous stage in life. So it can be challenging. And when people struggle with involuntary weight loss and with their body burning more energy than usual, then one of the challenges that comes up is that we really need to focus on trying to protect that person's muscle and bone tissue, because those can be vulnerable when we're not getting enough energy. So that's, those are the reasons why I've kind of chosen the different nutrition aspects to focus on today, is to try and focus on protecting muscle and bone tissue to keep you healthy. Okay, so on top of the involuntary movements, why else might it be difficult for a person to get enough energy? People living with PD may also have difficulty with swallowing safely. And so the foods that they previously were able to eat may not actually be safe for them anymore. And so that can make people feel hesitant to eat, the foods that they normally would want to eat, or they may not know what they can do to try and manage the issue. And that can, if you are worried about your safety, particularly for people who live alone, that can be a major barrier to being able to eat enough. The other part is too, if you do have swallowing difficulties, it might be that you've got to change some of the textures of the foods that you prepare. And it can be done in ways that are often enjoyable for people, but if you're not really sure how to go about it, then the food can seem less palatable because of the fact that the texture has changed. Texture is a major aspect of how people enjoy food and think of food. So talking with a dietitian about this can be very helpful to kind of try to figure out how to make things palatable for you personally, so that you feel that you're getting the nutrition that you need. So some ideas about how you can increase the energy that is in your food. And specifically, I'm just talking about calories in general. I'm not talking about any specific type of calories, just calories overall, trying to get energy into the body. A lot of times people have spent all of their adult life kind of looking for lower calorie foods, right? They're trying to manage their weight, or they're concerned that they'll gain weight if they eat, certain things. And so they tend to buy the lower calorie or light versions of foods. And so when you're diagnosed with a condition like this, where you're burning more energy, you actually need to pack more calories into what you're eating. So it is important to rethink some of those food choices. And so if you typically have been buying low calorie or light versions of food, it may be time to not do that and try to buy the full fat version of that food. Or say, for example, if you drink milk and you've always drank skim milk because that was, how you were trying to reduce calories, well, it may be worthwhile now to bump it up to, 2% or even 3% to try and get those additional calories. So it's not such a light food. Sauces and gravies are another really great way to add calories to food. Lots of people find that gravy and sauces are very, very palatable. So when I was talking about changing the texture of food, gravies and sauces can really help to make foods, first of all, actually easier to swallow. And we'll discuss that again a little bit later. But it can make the food also, very palatable. So it can encourage, when food is palatable, when it tastes really good, and it's appetizing, that's going to promote the person to want to eat more of it. And that seems obvious, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we have to remember that, oh yeah, maybe if I add some gravy to these potatoes, this would be something that I would look forward to more so, even though previously I would make something more like a roasted potato or a baked potato, let's say. Okay, how about some more ideas for how to get more energy? So you can also add nuts and seeds to salads and cereals, or eat them as a snack. Nuts are very rich in heart-healthy fats. They're also very rich in fiber, which is going to become important in our discussion about constipation. So, but with the caveat that if you do have difficulty swallowing those safely, then that may not be the best option for you. But for many people, they are doing okay with their swallowing, and it's not something that they're, they can safely eat those, or if they chew them well, then it's okay. So tailor this to your own personal, abilities and safety. But nuts and seeds are great. Another one that I actually didn't put on the slide, but can be really helpful is, for example, at the grocery store in the baking aisle, you can get ground up, you can get ground almonds, for example. So even if eating whole almonds is not something that you can do, ground almonds may be something that works really well. And then you can sprinkle that onto, say oatmeal, or other foods that, put it in a smoothie, or other foods that you enjoy, as a way to increase the calories and swallow it safely. Also, it can be good to just try and add a little bit of oil to things where you can. So olive oil is a good choice. I mentioned olive oil. It doesn't have to be olive oil. It could be other types, canola oil, or vegetable oil, or, olive oil just tastes really good. So I think a lot of people would think of that one, but it doesn't have to be that one. Different stores sell flavored oils as well, so that can be really nice. It doesn't have to be from the gourmet olive oil store, although it can be if that's something that you would like. But even at places like Superstore and No Frills, they sell oils that are flavored, for example, with roasted garlic. That can be a way to just kind of elevate the flavor of something that's more plain that you could eat to add more rich energy to your foods. Okay, and now moving on to a different aspect of how to get more energy into your diet. Try to eat frequently throughout the day. So some people have kind of always been, you know, maybe they, through their working life, they've always eaten, you know, really lightly in the morning and then ate a lot in the evening, but really not much throughout the day because they're busy with all kinds of things. But you may find that that strategy is less effective when you're trying to maintain your weight. So you may want to try to eat more frequently throughout the day. Plan meals and snacks to occur, you know, every couple hours so that your body is always getting topped up with energy. It can also be helpful if a person doesn't have a really great appetite. Eating small amounts frequently can be a lot better than trying to, you know, force a large portion when your appetite's really not as strong as what it might otherwise be. So that it is important to eat frequently throughout the day. Also, and this is touching on the social aspect, people eat better when they're together. So people tend to eat less when they're alone. And so if you can eat with people that you care about on a regular basis, it may not be possible for every single meal, and that's okay. But on a regular basis, you know, at least weekly, preferably multiple times per week, it is a good idea to try and eat with other people so that you're getting the social aspect of eating and sharing food. It promotes good nutrition, it promotes good digestion, it promotes good mental health. And when all of those things are in place, it makes it easier for us to achieve our nutrition needs. So I thought this was a funny picture of the Last Supper as a Zoom call. And I think that this can also still be a good way to eat with people that you care about. So, you know, even if you can't get together in person, doing something like a Zoom call once in a while with something. I know you all have Zoom because you're on today. So even doing a Zoom call with a friend or a family member can be a nice way to still include the social aspect of eating, even when we, you know, might live in a different city than the other person, or maybe there's a blizzard outside that you can't see each other in person. Okay, so I hope that was interesting information about energy. Let's move on to kind of drilling down a little bit. So among the nutrients that give us energy, protein is a particularly important one for people with PD to be focused on. So let's talk about why it's important. The reason why protein is important is that it provides the building blocks of every tissue in our body. So whether it's your hair, your skin, your vital organs, all of those parts of you. So thinking specifically about the muscles and the bones, but also vital organs and blood, hair, all that stuff. Every tissue in your body is made of protein. So if you think of, you know, your body as being like a house, or like a car. Let's imagine that it's like a car. The protein is going to be like the metal and the glass and the rubber that makes up the components of the car. So we need to keep those parts of us healthy to maintain the integrity of our body. So if protein is, and the thing about protein is that part of the reason why it's so important is our tissues are made of protein, of course, like I just said. But what will happen is if we can't eat enough protein or we're not eating enough protein, and maybe that'll be that we're eating the same amount of protein we always ate before, but now our metabolism has changed and we're burning more protein and we have higher calorie needs. What can happen is if your body is not achieving the protein requirements that it has, what will happen is your body still needs to do maintenance on your vital organs. So not that you need to, you know, you may not necessarily be trying to gain a ton of weight or anything, but even just to maintain your weight, what will happen is if you're not eating enough protein, your body will have to get the protein from somewhere because there is maintenance that needs to be done all day, every day on different tissues in your body. So what will happen is your body will take some from some of your larger muscles in your body. So let's say from the muscles in your arms or your shoulders or your legs. And it will break that protein down and rebuild it into, let's say, the liver protein that your body needs that day to make sure that your liver is functioning normally. So this is a really interesting thing that our bodies can do. It's quite amazing that our body can take its own protein, break it down, and then reassemble it into some other kind of protein that the body needs to stay healthy. But what happens over time is kind of like that diagram that I showed you a few slides ago. I'm going to go back to it. if that was happening on a regular basis, then you're going to see something like this, diagram of the gentleman here with his arm and shoulder muscle. So at first, that muscle was bigger. You can see that there's lots of it there, but then over time, if this person's not achieving their protein needs, you can see that some of it just gets slowly worn away. And that's because it can be for a lot of reasons, but one of the major reasons nutritionally is because that person might not be eating enough protein. And that can be because of all the reasons that I was saying. So let's go back to where we were. Okay, so it can be difficult because you may need more than what you previously needed. But it can also be difficult to get enough protein when money is tight. You know, sometimes there are other things that are kind of squeezing our budget and making it difficult to buy. You know, I know food prices, I'm sure all of us have noticed, have become quite a lot higher over the course of the pandemic, and particularly in the last few months. It also may be a challenge to get enough protein if you struggle with safe food preparation. So if cooking is a challenge for you because of, you know, whatever reason, because of your mobility or because of your energy levels or things like that, you may not feel confident still preparing, you know, being around the stove and, you know, preparing things the way that you have in the past. And so that can make it difficult to get enough protein into your diet. The other reason why it might be difficult is because if you feel that you can't swallow safely, you know, that might make it scary to try and eat some protein sources. And you may not know what are some options for how to update your recipes or make different choices so that you can safely achieve the safe swallowing. So those are all reasons why someone might have a hard time getting enough protein. Okay, so how can we get more protein? Eggs, nut butters, you know, I say peanut butter here, but it could be almond butter or sunflower seed butter. There's different kinds. Beans and lentils, all of these are going to be the most affordable. So eggs, peanut butter, beans, and lentils, definitely going to be the least expensive options. And they can all be very versatile. I mean, if we think of all the different ways we can cook eggs, you know, there's a lot of options there for how a person can get more protein. The other thing about eggs, peanut butter, beans, and lentils is that all of those foods tend to keep for a really long time. So that can be really helpful too. You know, if you're not up to cooking every day, or, you know, if you buy things and you might not be sure if you can use them all really quickly or things like that, that all of those foods keep for quite a while. If you can, it's a good idea to add protein to every meal for sure. And then most snacks if possible. So if you have 2 snacks a day, it'd be good to try and add protein to them if you can. That doesn't mean you have to always do it, but you should, it is wise to try and get some protein at every meal to ensure that you're actually meeting your body's needs. You can use supplements like protein powders and shakes. So that can be another helpful thing if food preparation is difficult for you, or if you're looking to just, you know, you're still doing okay with some food preparation, but your body just needs more to maintain your weight, then those kind of shakes and powders can be very helpful to just get you the rest of the way. You can also consider a prepared meal service like Meals on Wheels. So there are different, you know, Meals on Wheels, unlike other prepared meal services, they can accommodate texture modifications and taste preferences. So that's really important. You know, you can tell them if you're just really not a fan of beef, or you don't tolerate it well, or you really don't like fish, or, you know, you have an allergy or something, they can deal with that. So that's kind of nice, because a lot of other places, you know, kind of made to order meal services won't really be able to guarantee that kind of safety. And they can do the texture modifications that are needed as well. And so services like Meals on Wheels have many different stages of texture modification. So there's a lot of difference between kind of, you know, standard diet and then the most texture modified things. There's like gradient in between where things are just cooked a little bit more soft or cut into different size pieces and stuff like that. And that can be really helpful to kind of keep the food at where you're at, so that you're getting things that taste the best and are the most appropriate for you. Meals on Wheels is also nice because you don't have to order it every day. So usually they ask you to commit to a certain amount of orders. You know, you're trying to achieve you know, they'll maybe ask you, okay, well, you know, do you want how many times a week? And then you'd say, oh, I would like it twice a week. And so they come to you twice a week. So you really don't have to commit to every single day. So that can leave a little bit more flexibility for, you know, if you have appointments or if you just want to be free to do other things on different days. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize about Meals on Wheels services is that they also have frozen meals that are that you can just purchase, you know, kind of in bulk. I think they, at least in Winnipeg, I don't know about in other towns and cities, but you can get, if you order 10, you can get these frozen pre-prepared meals, and you just keep them in your freezer and they can be reheated whenever you are ready to have them. So that can be nice and flexible if you don't want to commit to, you know, being home at a certain time when a meal is going to come, or if you really just want meals sometimes when you don't feel up to cooking, or, you know, if it's been a busy day or something like that. So they can meet your nutrition needs. The one other thing that I'll mention that's attractive about Meals on Wheels is that they often they will often have considerations for other types of diets as well. So let's say you also have high blood pressure and you need to have low sodium as well. So the services like Meals on Wheels can actually accommodate that, whereas some of the other meal programs that are out there would not be able to do that. Finally, the last benefit about a service like Meals on Wheels is that if you happen to be somebody who's accessing social services like EIA, so Employment and Income Assistance, if you need that, Meals on Wheels can still be an option for you. So a lot of times when people are accessing those kind of services, money is really tight for groceries, and this can be a way to get meals that are very nutritious but heavily subsidized, so that it's not totally taking away all of your budget just towards food. And also, just as a final plug, dietitians can help you get set up with that. So if you're thinking like, yeah, this could be something I might want to use, then you may want to follow up with a dietitian after this, and I'll tell you how you can do that. Okay, so some of you may have been thinking, I know everybody has been very respectful and has been keeping their microphones muted and questions and stuff. So there may be questions about, you may have heard about protein and how it can, how levodopa therapy and protein may interact with each other. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So the reason why people are concerned about this is that the cells that absorb proteins and amino acids in our intestines are the same cells that our body needs to absorb the levodopa that people need to take. And so our cells are specially designed to absorb protein, right? Because that's what they're there for. That's a natural function of our body, is to absorb protein out of food. And levodopa is a medication. And so when you put those two things together, if the two have to have a competition for which one's going to get absorbed, sometimes protein is going to win because it's a little bit better designed to actually cross the gut barrier than a medication. Our bodies are designed to absorb nutrients from food. So if you find, now this is not a problem for everybody. So I really encourage you to just reflect on your own situation and how this may or may not affect you. If you find that it doesn't affect you and your medication seems to be just as effective, no matter if you're eating, you know, a heavier meal or a lighter meal or things, then that's great. This information wouldn't apply to you. But for those that notice, sometimes people notice that when they eat higher protein foods around the time that they take their medication, that it takes the medication longer for it to work, or it takes the medication, they don't get quite as potent of an effect of the medication. So if that's the case, it's a good idea to take notes on it. Don't alter your medication schedule without talking about it with your doctor first. But what you may be able to do, and a dietitian can help with this, is to try to plan your meals and snacks around your medication schedule so that you're still getting the nutrients you need, but you're also still getting the medication therapy that you need. So for example, you may need about 30 to 60 minutes after taking levodopa before you eat any high protein foods like meat or fish or, you know, Greek yogurt or something. I think a question that had come through before the presentation was people wonder, well, how much protein is okay? You know, if I am going to have a little bit of protein around the time of my levodopa, how much would be okay? If you find that you have this interaction and it's something that you're concerned about, or you want to see if there is an interaction, then what you would do is try to keep the protein to less than about 5 grams. So there's about 7 grams in an egg. So it would be, it's not zero protein. You know, a slice of bread or something might be fine. There's a little bit of protein in there, but not much. So it may be okay to have a low protein snack or fruit or vegetable with your medication dose. And then you can see if that, you know, if your tolerance and your symptoms are improved. And I'm going to be sending out after the presentation today, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides that I'm going through today. But then I also have a handout to send you from Parkinson's Canada that's about levodopa and protein. So that'll give you more detailed information than what we're covering in this presentation. So even if you find that protein and levodopa, you know, do interact for you, you still need to consume adequate protein every day, because you will have problems with muscle and bone health if you don't achieve adequate protein. So we still have to find a way to get it even in these circumstances. Sometimes people, just moving on to the next point, sometimes people have heard that they need to restrict protein, and they may have heard of something called a protein redistribution diet. Those don't have great evidence. So I wouldn't recommend that you try this without discussing it first with a healthcare team that includes a dietitian. The idea with a protein redistribution diet is that you would really try not to eat any protein at all for pretty much the daytime hours. And then at your supper time, you would include an unlimited amount of protein. So you really try to get lots at your supper time. So for the day, it would be mostly fruits and vegetables, because those are the lowest protein foods, and then really going heavy on it at supper time. The problem with this is, just for the reasons that I went through in the previous slides, that can make it difficult for you to actually achieve your protein needs. So we do need to balance these two things and try to find the right balance for people. And so please discuss this with your healthcare team if this is something that you feel that you want to try. Okay, I think that's most of what I wanted to say about the protein. So let's keep going. Okay, so now that we've talked about calories and protein, I'd like to discuss some of the specific challenges that come along with eating with PD. So one of the first ones, and I know that this can be one of the symptoms that people have right from early on in their Parkinson's journey. A lot of people have, they suffer with constipation. And, you know, anybody who's ever been constipated knows it is no fun. It is can be very uncomfortable feeling and can really mess with the quality of how you experience your day. So different reasons why this can happen. Okay, so sometimes people don't have a really great appetite. Sometimes they're getting inadequate physical activity, because physical activity is one of the ways that our body builds up its appetite, and also physical activity physically helps the intestines to move and jostle around a bit, so that nutrients are moving through them. So I think it's awesome that U-Turn is offering a lot of physical activity classes for a variety of reasons, but one of the things that will be good for is actually your digestion and constipation. So you may also have medication side effects, you know, particularly people that need to take pain medications. Pain medications are notorious for causing constipation. So it could be that. It could be that the Parkinson's is affecting your intestinal cells or the muscles of your intestines. And if that's the case, that can also cause them to be slower moving and more likely to be constipated. And the other reason that's common to many Canadians is that most Canadians don't eat enough fiber. So if we pick a couple of these and put them all together in one person, you can see how constipation could be a pretty big issue and could become quite a big problem. So if you struggle with constipation, you first of all, you can try increasing your fluid intake. So making sure that you're good and hydrated. So how to tell, sometimes people ask me, like, how much water do I need to drink? What's the magic number? And I actually don't look at hydration that way. The way I look at hydration is the person should be urinating every couple hours, and it should be relatively dilute. Okay, so it shouldn't be like a super concentrated color. It shouldn't be like what it is first thing in the morning. It should be more dilute, and it should be every couple hours. So if you find that you don't go pee after 9 in the morning until like 3 in the afternoon, you're not drinking enough fluid. So that would be a way to tell. So when we're talking about fluid intake, Water is not the only option. Of course, water is awesome, and I hope that everybody drinks water, but soup counts, even coffee and tea count, juices and broths also count. So all of those things count. Sometimes people have heard that coffee doesn't count or tea doesn't count because it has caffeine. They do count as long as it's not the only thing you drink. So just be aware of that. So keeping your fluid intake high is going to help your bowels to be able to pass materials through there more easily. You can also add fiber to your diet. So whole grains, beans and lentils, nuts and seeds, vegetables and fruit, and Metamucil. All of these are good options. Metamucil can be great and can kind of help, you know, especially if you're feeling like you're a bit limited in the variety of food that you can keep in the house or safely prepare. Metamucil can be very helpful because it'll give you that little, it doesn't totally replace food or anything, but it can give you that little boost that, that your body needs to kind of kickstart your digestion a little bit better. So notice that fiber comes always from the list that I have here of fiber foods is all plant-based foods, okay? So it always comes from plants. You're not gonna get any fiber from eating meat. So just be aware that including plant foods into your diet is going to be a really good, is going to be necessary to make sure that you're getting enough fiber. We already touched on how physical activity is good for constipation. So keep coming to your boxing classes and all of your other classes that you do and your workouts that you do. Go for walks, the things that you can do. This is another one that I'm going to bring up next. It sounds kind of obvious, but it's really important for people to listen to their bodies and go to the bathroom when the urge comes. So there's lots of reasons why people might not actually do this, right? Maybe they are out and about and it is not a convenient time, or they're not too sure where every bathroom is everywhere they go. And so they just go, well, you know, I'm just going to wait until later. But then by the time later comes, they're home or they're, you know, done with their outing or whatever, done with work. Then the constipation can get substantially worse in that interval time. So our bodies have kind of like a window where the urge can come. And if we don't pay attention to it, then it goes away. And when it goes away, the constipation tends to get quite a bit worse. So just listen to your body. If you are out and about, excuse yourself, go find a bathroom and follow your body's signals. It can also be, I put this tip last because it's you know, something that you can try if these other tips don't work first. It can be helpful to try and set aside some time for routine. Our bodies love routine. Routine is really good for us, and it helps our bodies to know what to expect and when to follow through on certain functions. So it can be a good idea to set aside a time every day that is consistent, where if you've been struggling with constipation, where you just take 10 or 15 minutes to just sit down in the bathroom on the toilet and just kind of have that time set aside so that if your body wants to go, it can go. It won't work right away on the first day or anything, but if you do this consistently, our brain notices that, like, oh, this is the time to go to the bathroom, and it can help to promote the body to actually follow through and do what we're hoping. So promoting a routine for your body is a good thing. Just like it's a good idea to go to sleep and get up at the same time most days. It helps our body have a good clock for sleeping. It's the same thing with this. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you about constipation. Next, I wanted to talk with you about dysphagia or difficulty swallowing. So if you have this, even if it's not all the time, or even if it's just, you know, with certain foods, do not ignore it, okay? Please get it checked out by your physician or nurse practitioner or your specialist. What should happen is you should be referred to get a swallowing assessment so that they can see there are many things that can go wrong with the swallowing mechanism in the body. It's a very complex part of us. It's got several stages, and there's different places where things can go wrong with it. And you can't tell that just by looking at someone. You need tests and imaging to figure that out. And then once we know what that is, we can give you specific advice about what to do about it. So very, very important that you get a swallowing assessment to find out what specifically is happening so that you can, you know, a lot of times when we do a swallowing assessment, then the person actually ends up needing to make fewer alterations or compromises to their food because they now know what actually is happening. So they know which things to alter and which things they can just leave alone and not worry about. So It sometimes takes a while to get in for a swallowing assessment. So that's another reason to just bring it up early on when it starts to happen, if it starts to happen. So what are some signs and symptoms of this? And sometimes the person themselves doesn't notice it first. Sometimes it's caregivers or partners that notice first. So this can be helpful for everybody just to be aware. If you notice, so one of the ones that I find is all of these are telltale signs, but some of the ones that might stand out that aren't obvious about choking or aspirating or having dysphagia would be having a weak or soft voice, or having like a wet quality to your voice after eating or during eating. Of course, if you feel that you're choking on food or drink, or coughing during or after swallowing. If you ever end up coughing so much that you end up bringing food back up, that's definitely a red flag. Aspirating, so feeling like you've breathed in food or drink is another one that you should get checked out. Everybody has that happen once in a while, but if it's happening more than every once in a while, you need to get this looked at. Excessive saliva or drooling, difficulty chewing. Also, if you have difficulty forming what we call a bolus, which is the little ball of food that you swallow when you chew it up, sometimes people have difficulty forming that correctly at the back of their mouth. And so it's a problem with the tongue, or, you know, problems there with the palate. So that can be an issue. Or if you feel that food is ever stuck. And so sometimes people feel they need to swallow 3 times before they get something down or more. So any of these, please do get that, don't ignore it, and please get it looked at. Okay, so with that said, now that I've convinced you that you should get personalized recommendations, let's give some more general recommendations. So some tips to manage this. Use gravies and sauces to lubricate your food. So I talked about that for getting more calories anyways. So it tends to make food very palatable, but it also, that lubrication makes it much easier to swallow safely. So particularly fatty sauces like buttery sauces or gravies are very helpful. You may need to avoid mixed textured foods. So you can see here, I've got like meatballs and mashed potatoes on the diagram. So I would suggest that you don't eat a bite that has meatball and mashed potato in it at the same time. Okay, you would take a bite of the mashed potato, and then once you've swallowed that effectively, then you would have the bite of the meatball, so that the foods are not mixed texture in your mouth and throat at the same time. That can make it safer. Also, you know, there's some foods that are really mixed texture, like some salads, or some like stir fries and stuff like that, where there's like rice and nuts and meat and different vegetables that have different firmnesses and stuff all at the same time. You may do better, even if you have all the same foods, just kind of taking a bite of each type at a time rather than having really mixed bites. Okay. Good idea, and this is just good practice for everybody, but especially if you have difficulty with swallowing, is to really try to focus on what you're doing while you're eating, so that you can swallow safely. So turn off the TV. If you have other distractions, then try to minimize those for while you're eating. But as I said before, the social aspect of eating is very, very important. So, you know, visiting with somebody, having a conversation is great. But if you are kind of watching TV or catching up on a show, you may be distracted enough that your swallowing is compromised. So just be aware of that. Take your time, take small bites. So you may just need to have a bite that's a smaller size than what you're used to, and then you manage it just fine. Whereas bigger bites tend to be harder to form a bolus and swallow it safely. Chew carefully, if, you know, especially if it is a food that's more, you know, something like nuts or that, where it breaks into, you know, crunchy little pieces and stuff. It's easier for that to kind of go awry when you try to swallow it. So just chewing that carefully so that you know that that you can swallow it. And then just taking time to swallow completely before starting the next bite. You may also find that it goes better for you to just choose softer cooked foods, and that doesn't have to mean that the flavor is compromised. For example, you may want to braise meat instead of roasting it. Or you may find that more of like a ground beef, you know, like maybe something like a meatloaf is better to swallow or easier to swallow than something like a steak. You may find that foods like mashed potatoes work better instead of roasted, but you can dress them up with, like, you know, butter and sour cream and stuff like that to make it taste really good. Okay, so that's all I've got about dysphagia. We're going to move on now to talking about your bone health. So the other major topic that I wanted to bring up for nutrition challenges. So protecting your bone density. Why are we worried about this? The problem is that people with PD have a higher risk of osteoporosis. You can see here on the diagram that I have, there's a lady and we're looking at her pelvis, and you can see that when the diagram at the top, you can see the healthy bone, and you can see that it's quite dense. So there are little holes and chambers in the bone, but there's lots of thick bone in between that's kind of making that bone strong. That's called the bone matrix. So the bone matrix is nice and sturdy. And then you can see in the second picture, the person has osteoporosis, and you can see that the bone matrix is much thinner, and the cavities in between the bone fibers are much larger. And so that is going to lead to the bones being more at risk of fracturing. And so people with PD do have a higher risk of this. And so we want to watch out for it because fractures can be the difference between maintaining independence and not. So it's very, very important that we protect our bone health so that we can move safely and continue to do the things we like to do. So this is concerning, especially when it is combined with a higher risk of falls. So if you have issues with your balance, that's going to be an even bigger risk that if you did fall, that it would be a bad injury. So what do we want to do about it? We want to make it sure that the person is consuming foods with calcium and vitamin D every day. So, if we grew up not a milk drinker, or maybe we did grow up as a milk drinker, but we kind of stopped drinking it because, we just got used to drinking water or whatever it is. It is a good idea to try and find ways to include this. So some options would be dairy products, of course, but fortified dairy alternatives are a good option too. So if you don't tolerate cow's milk, you could choose like an almond beverage or a soy beverage. That would be fine. There's even juices that are fortified, so you can find those. If you can swallow it safely, canned fish with bones is actually an excellent source of calcium and vitamin D. So you could try that, and it tends to be one of the more affordable things too. It is a good idea to take a daily vitamin D supplement. So about 1,000 international units per day is a good amount to aim for. So supplements sometimes have 400, a lot of them have 1,000. So just being aware when you choose one to try and get one with 1,000, that's appropriate for an adult. Before the age of 50, looking at calcium needs. So vitamin D helps your body to absorb calcium. And then calcium is one of the major minerals that constitutes your bone like the hardness of your bones. So adults before the age of 50 need about 1,000 milligrams of calcium per day to maintain their bone health. Adults over the age of 50 need a bit more. So about 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day. Our bodies do absorb calcium the best when we get it from food. So sometimes people ask, can I just take a calcium supplement? You really should talk with your doctor or pharmacist before you do that, because depending on what medications you take, calcium supplements may not be appropriate for you. So just have that conversation and make sure that you're doing something that's safe for you. But our bodies, even if a supplement is safe for us, our bodies will always absorb that mineral better from food. That's just how our intestines are designed, is to absorb nutrients from food. So you will find that that your results will be better if you are getting the calcium from something like a fortified food instead of from a supplement. But supplements also have their place. So if you can't get enough through food, then a supplement may be an option for you. So just have that conversation with your doctor or pharmacist. Okay, now I'd like to touch a little bit on how partners and caregivers can help. So I've got just a couple tips that are kind of more broad in nature. So some of the things that you can do that can be really supportive and helpful is to really just talk with your partner and ask them what would help them. So in this case, we're talking about nutrition. There might be certain dishes that your partner really enjoys. Ask if it would be helpful to try and find ways to include more calories in those dishes, or whatever it is that the person may find supportive and helpful. You can be a big help by encouraging opportunities to socialize and eat together. So sometimes couples get in the habit of kind of like doing their own thing at meals, and they are watching the news together, or they're off in separate rooms. One person's on the computer and the other person's reading a book or whatever it is. And so it can be, remember that the social aspect of eating is very, very important. And so if you can encourage, you know, sitting down together, having a conversation, listen to some music, something like that, to encourage a healthy appetite and a healthy intake is a really good thing. Also, it's really supportive. Whenever I see, I always love when I have appointments with people and their partner comes and their partner is interested in hearing the information that that the person is trying to learn about how to manage their health. So it always is tremendously helpful when partners are open to trying new recipes and methods of cooking. And if that includes cooking together, sometimes there's one person that does more of the cooking than the other. That's totally normal. But being open to trying new recipes and methods of cooking together can help the person feel really supported and just kind of included in their care. Okay, and so if you have certain recipes that you would like to adapt to your changing nutrition needs, talk to a dietitian. We love this stuff. This is like, I love trying to help people come up with ways to make something still taste really, really good and still match the kind of cultural vibe and flavor of a food, even if it needs to be updated to kind of make sure that the person can get what they need out of it. Okay. And then here are just a couple tips of things that sometimes people end up struggling with. So couples sometimes, or partners and caregivers sometimes struggle with. People can find it really difficult when their partner tries to control their food intake. So sometimes people will, you know, not allow their partner to eat certain things, or they will really push that person to eat certain things and try to really control what that person decides to eat. And it's just important to remember that all of us are adults in these situations, and it's important not to try and control the other person, because that often leads to a lot of pressure and it can lead to just conflict and difficulty. If the person finds it helpful for you to try and, you know, really push them to eat certain things and you've had that conversation, then great. But just being aware that sometimes just taking more of like an open and supportive stance can be really, really promote better nutrition. If the person doesn't want to, or doesn't want to eat certain foods, just really try to keep the pressure off. Don't try to force it. Sometimes that can happen when people are starting to work on texture modification and the person really doesn't want to try that food, or they don't want to make a change. Don't force it. You know, we can continue to have these conversations and, you know, focus more on foods that the person does enjoy and can safely swallow. Okay, I am going to now turn it over to Attica, and she is going to cover some information about label reading.
Okay, hi everyone. So we're gonna switch gears and talk a little bit about label reading. So label reading is important in general just because it gives us, whenever we're grocery shopping, a little bit of an overview and snapshot of what's kind of in our foods. So today we'll be focusing mostly on the calories and proteins that are in food. But if you have any other like chronic health conditions that you need to manage and sort of balance with those things, then I would recommend talking to a dietitian about it and about other things that you should look for when you're looking at nutrition labels and label reading. So there's kind of 3 steps that we kind of do when we're looking at labels. So the first step is to check the portion sizes of your labels and then comparing them to what you actually eat. So in the example that's on the slideshow, it's for 1/3 of a cup. So you always just want to make sure, like, is 1/3 of the cup what you eat, or do you eat more than that? So yeah, just making sure that you're paying attention to what's on the serving size. And then the second step is to check the calories. So that's something Dawne spoke about in the beginning of the presentation, that we want to look at calories just because we may need more energy when we have PD. So calories is essentially the total energy that our bodies get from fats, carbohydrates, and protein all together. And then the third step that we do when we're looking at labels is checking for protein, which is also one of the nutrients that we want to increase. Just to protect our muscles and to protect our bone health. So yes, checking for protein, and more is better at meals and less may be better for snacks, as Dawne kind of mentioned previously when she was talking about proteins. Okay, so this next slide is just kind of a label reading activity. So we're just going to compare two different types of yogurt and then see which one would be the best option for us when we look at the calories and the protein. So the photo on the left is for the source yogurt, and that serving size for that one is 1/3 cup versus the Liberté yogurt, which I think is 3/4 cup. So they have different serving sizes, so that's always something that we want to pay attention to. And then the next thing that we look at is the calorie content. So for 1/3 cup of the source yogurt, it's 35 calories for 1/3 cup. And then for the Liberty yogurt, it's 200 calories for 3/4 cup. So so far, there's more calories in the Liberté yogurt than the source one. And then finally, we're looking at protein. So in terms of protein, the source yogurt has 4 grams of protein versus the Liberté yogurt, which has 13 grams of protein. So when we're comparing these two side by side, the one that we would most likely want to choose is the Liberté yogurt, just because it has a higher calorie content, so it gives us more energy than the source one would. And then it also has higher protein content. So overall, it would be the better choice if you ever see these in a grocery store. Yeah, so that's kind of an example of how we would read labels and how we would compare. Yeah, good, perfect. And then, so this next slide is just kind of when you would want to see a dietitian for any specific needs that you may have. So the first reason would be if you're experiencing any unintentional weight loss or gain. So if you find yourself ever losing weight or gaining weight in great amounts in a shorter period of time, then you definitely want to see a dietitian for how we can deal with that and maybe the potential reasons behind that, because yes, it can be dangerous if you are gaining or losing weight in a short period of time. And then you can also see a dietitian if you have difficulty planning for getting enough of the protein and calories that we were talking about previously. I know meals can get really repetitive if you have to follow a certain diet. So seeing a dietitian that can give you more possible options or just to refresh yourself with new ideas can be really beneficial. And then if you're just having difficulty and you're not sure how to balance your PD nutrition with other health concerns, like on the slide, high blood pressure, diabetes, IBS, or any other conditions that you may have, it's definitely beneficial to see a dietitian to see how you can deal with that and any suggestions that they may have for you, just to make it a bit easier. And then also just after getting a swallowing assessment, if you have to, I guess, change the texture of your foods at all and you're not sure how to do that or what texture is right for you and what foods is good for that, then a dietitian can definitely guide you with that and can give you more specific advice with what you can do and what foods you can eat. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Annika. So we're coming to the end of our formal material today. And so what I'd like to cover next is just some information about what you can do to try and, if you want more information about nutrition. So if you have general nutrition questions, there is a really great service. Now, this is Winnipeg specific or Manitoba specific. So there is a service called Dial a Dietitian, where you can just call a phone number and a dietitian picks up and you can have a quick discussion with them about questions that you have. So that can be a nice kind of informal way to get some answers. But if you need more support than that, you may want to meet with a registered dietitian. So no matter where you are, at least in Manitoba, if you have private health insurance, private dietitians are a really great option. A lot of times private dietitians will do entire meal plans and things for people if that's what they want. Or they may, just consult with you more for ideas, just depending on what your needs are. So private dietitians are a great option if you do have private health insurance. But of course, and I'm going to send these slides out, remember, so you'll have this link for yourself when I send it. but not everybody has those kind of private benefits. And if you don't, you still can be eligible to see a dietitian. So there's a link here, wrha.mb.ca/nutrition. And there is, once you go to that page, there is a button that you can click called Find a Dietitian, and you can actually send in an email request and just explain, they'll ask just for a few details about what your concerns are. And then they can arrange to have a community dietitian such as myself to meet with you. So that's, I get a lot of referrals that way. It will be organized based on what area of the city you live in to try and make it close to where you live. Now, what if you don't live in Manitoba? So I don't have great knowledge about every dietitian service in other provinces, unfortunately, but here is a good place to start. So if you are in Ontario, go to the College of Dietitians of Ontario. This link here will take you directly to their nutrition services page, where you can look for a dietitian or find out what services might be available to you. So you can check that out. And then in Quebec, the Ordre des Diététistes Nutritionnistes de Québec has information as well for people that are there. So that will also take you to the same page, but on the Quebec side. If you happen to be in another province, let me know and I'll try and help you out. But really what you would be looking for is the keywords would be College of Dietitians of blank province, and then, or territory, and then you will get the information about where to go from there. Okay, so I hope that this has been helpful. We're at the end of the formal material for the presentation. Thank you so much for coming. And I really look forward to getting into what questions you have and get some discussion going. So let's go from there. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Dawne. Thank you, Annika. I have a few questions here. I'm just going to go down the list from how in the order they were sent. So I have, the first question I have is how to encourage a person with dementia and Parkinson's to eat more when everything doesn't have a taste and also has swallowing problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. So I think for sure having a discussion with a dietitian one-on-one to kind of learn about that person's specific needs would be beneficial. So a lot of times people with dementia, for example, they may not have the same hunger and fullness cues that they used to have before the dementia affected their cognition. So sometimes it can be that they have appetite at like different times of the day than they used to. So they're, you know, maybe they used to always be a morning person and eat lots in the morning, but then now they're getting really hungry like late at night. So you may need to discuss that to see if there's ways to kind of like try and promote the person to have a bit of a regular routine, if possible, not always possible. The other part is that when people have dementia, sometimes it's not so much just the actual, like if you think about what eating, how eating happens, it can be quite complex. And so sometimes what happens is the person gets a little bit confused, or they're not sure what to do about even just utensils and things. So it might be that the actual process of eating is too complicated. And so the person may do better with like a finger food instead of a food that requires manipulation with a utensil. So that can sometimes be an option. It can also be good to just offer the food frequently, because if a person takes, 3 bites of something and then says they're full, but then they're willing to take 3 bites of it a little bit later, frequent feeding may still help the person to reach their nutrition needs adequately. Another option is that the person may, so I was saying before that it's best to not eat with distractions, and particularly if the person has lots of swallowing difficulties, but we need to look at the individual situation, because sometimes if a person is distracted, they will eat more. So they might, if they're focused on it, they might get kind of anxious or stressed out by the food. They may feel agitated by, having their show turned off or whatever it was that they were paying attention to. So it can sometimes actually promote the person to eat better if they have a distraction. So it's really individual at that point. So I would really encourage a discussion with a dietitian to try and help you troubleshoot some of those problems. It's a very good question.
Okay, so I think one of the questions is the problem with adding protein to each meal and snack is that it competes with levodopa for absorption and can make meds less effective. I think you touched on that, Dawn, unless you have more to say.
Yeah, so yes, that is a concern for some people. It doesn't happen to everyone. So I think it's important to make sure, you know, to think on your own situation and see if it's something that affects you. So a food and symptom diary can be really helpful. So it doesn't have to be like a fancy document or anything. It can just be a sheet of paper where you write down kind of what time you took your medication, what meal you had, and those kinds of things. And then you can mark what your symptoms were like that day. And if you do that over the course of some time, that can make it easier to identify some patterns. It might be that a little bit of protein is okay, but a lot isn't. And a lot of times that can be remedied. What Parkinson's Canada would recommend is that you give about 30 to 60 minutes after eating a high protein food, take your medication 30 to 60 minutes before eating that high protein food, so that your body, it has a chance to get into your intestine, have your cells start to absorb it before the protein gets in there and starts to compete with it. So that would be probably the way to go. But again, you can talk about it with a dietitian as well to try and get, you can plan time things if that is what you need to help you.
Great. All right. As well as Parkinson's, I have fatty liver and am advised to eat less protein. What would be the best solution? I always feel tired and hungry too.
Okay, so that's a really good question. Fatty liver is a super common health issue. So I mean, I think everybody, when they're talking about kind of individual needs, it is good to have the conversation with a dietitian. But as some general information, increasing your fiber intake is very, very helpful. So whenever a person struggles with hunger and portion control and feeling that they're hungry, one of the first things I'm going to look at is, does this person have enough fiber in their diet? And usually they do not, because most Canadians don't have enough fiber. So fiber is beneficial not just for the appetite, but it also, and not just for the constipation, because we talked about that too, that it can be helpful with constipation. But the other thing that fiber is really helpful for is that it draws out the fatty buildup in the liver and helps it to leave the body. So increasing fiber is a really good option for dealing with fatty liver. The other thing is that fatty liver is actually, we don't actually recommend that a person reduce their protein intake. What we want is usually for them to reduce their saturated fat and their sugar intake. So it might be, there are definitely some foods that are high in protein, but they're also high in saturated fats. So let's think something like, let's say, with skin, for example. That food is going to have lots of saturated fat, but it also has lots of protein. If the chicken skin is removed, then the food is still very high in protein, but it's not as high in saturated fat. And so in that case, I know the label reading and the nutrition discussion that we had today wasn't really focused on different types of fats. So that would again be something that we could follow up on after. But generally, what we would recommend for fatty liver would be to reduce saturated fat and increase fiber. So those would be the directions that you would go in. Saturated fat, if you're wondering what that is, it's the type of fat that's solid at room temperature. So if you think of things like butter or bacon grease or like coconut oil, all of those, any kind of meat that you get from any kind of fat that you get from most kinds of meat, like sausages and things, is going to be saturated fat. It's solid at room temperature. So we generally want to reduce that. But I also said that you need lots of calories. So the unsaturated fats can be a good way to make up the difference. So unsaturated fats are also beneficial for fatty liver. So that would be the fats that are liquid at room temperature, like olive oil and canola oil and avocado.
Okay, so there's another question that I think aligns well with what you just said, that my spouse has PD and seems to be hungry a lot. He would benefit from losing weight rather than gaining. Is this unique for someone with PD? And I think it touches on what you're talking about, increasing fiber, reducing saturated fats, etc.
So increasing fiber is really important. Do not skimp on protein. So protein is still important. A person can still, even when they may have excess body weight, we still want to protect the muscle and the bone health. So we wouldn't want to take away the protein foods. We'd focus instead on reducing things like the saturated fat. Also, small and frequent meals can be really helpful as well, and lots of fiber.
All right, here's a good question. I'm a vegetarian. No meat, chicken, fish, very few eggs, cheese without rennet. Are things different in terms of proteins, etc.?
Okay, so you can totally be healthy on a vegetarian pattern of eating. So I think that in that case, it's going to be very important you still need to get enough protein just like everybody else, but you would need to get those proteins from plant-based sources. So beans and lentils would really need to be your friend in this case. Tofu can be a really good option because tofu comes in a variety of textures as well. So that can be a really good one. If you do eat eggs, it may not be that it's the basis of your whole diet. That's okay. But if you do include them sometimes, then that's an excellent source of protein to have. But really, if we're, if we're looking at trying to achieve protein needs and we're not including things like cheese and Greek yogurt and eggs on a regular basis, then beans and lentils are really the way to go. The nice thing about beans and lentils is that they can also be cooked in many, many different kinds of ways. They can go in a lot of different kinds of dishes. They can be cooked really nice and soft for different textures. So that would be where you'd be looking for most of your protein. And then you can get some from nuts and seeds, but depending on your swallowing and stuff, that might be something to consider as well, just if which ones are going to work best for you. But it's important to know that nuts on their own are not that high in protein. They're much higher in fat and fiber, which is good, but it's not going to necessarily always get you far enough in terms of protein. So beans and lentils are going to definitely be a major part of achieving adequate protein intake.
All right, so I'm going to do a double header here. Someone had a question about the best time to take calcium and vitamin D throughout the day, nighttime or before or after meals or around the same time as Parkinson's meds. And also, what are good alternatives to getting calcium instead of just milk?
Okay, so the best time to take calcium and vitamin D throughout the day. Calcium and vitamin D, you can talk to your pharmacist about whether or not it interferes with your other medications, because I don't know that. I'm not a pharmacist, so they would need to comment on that. But what I can comment on is the nutrition side of it. So calcium and vitamin D, our bodies are designed to absorb nutrients from food. So remember, I had touched on that our body absorbs nutrients better from food than from supplements. So if you take your supplement with food, that is a good thing, because then that will put the food matrix there and it helps the body. The body's just designed to absorb nutrients that way. That's another reason why I'm a really big fan of fortified foods. So if you are really not into, milk, there may be a milk alternative that you like better. You may, lots of people really like almond beverage or coconut beverage. A lot of those are fortified with calcium and vitamin D. So that can be a good option for you. If you're just really not any of those are a good option, then salmon with the bones, the soft bones that are in it, the bones can be mashed up pretty well as long as you have decent swallowing. Those can be a really good option for getting good calcium and vitamin D. You would need to have it a few times a week. So you may still need supplements over and above if that's kind of the route that works best for you. And remember that there are fortified juices as well. So that may also be a good option if you're looking for something. The milk alternatives, I think, are the ones that are going to get you there the quickest and easiest if you're looking for an alternative to just cow's milk. But the juices are definitely something to consider. And supplements do have their place. So take them with food.
All right. Is soluble or insoluble fiber more beneficial to prevent constipation?
The insoluble fiber, well, they both have an effect. Actually, sorry, can I just go back to the previous question for 1 second? With the calcium and the vitamin D, I just wanted to mention that our bodies cannot absorb more than about 500 milligrams of calcium at once. So if you are taking a 500 milligram calcium with a glass of milk, let's say, and that glass of milk has 300 milligrams of calcium in it, now you're up to 800, your body's not really going to be able to get the best out of all of that. So it'd be better to put your supplement with a meal. Also, if you're trying to achieve that supplement, if you're using that supplement, let's say you're trying to get to 1200 milligrams, so you might be taking, 2 of those 500 milligram calcium supplements plus trying to drink, a fortified beverage or something at some point during the day. It'd be best to split those doses up. Don't take both calciums at once because your body can really only make use of about 1 at a time. So that was the other thing I wanted to say. Vitamin D is not the same. Vitamin D, you don't have to worry about splitting it up or anything like that. But, so I wanted to add an addendum onto that answer before moving on to the next one. Okay. So let's go back to that next question.
Is soluble or insoluble fiber more
Right.
beneficial to prevent constipation?
Yeah. So the insoluble fiber is better for the constipation. It is the physical like bulking that happens in the stool. So it gives volume and bulk to the stool, and that makes it easier for it to pass through the body. So if you think about how the intestines work, what they do is they have muscles that are all the way along. So imagine your intestines are like a big, tube that kind of snake around inside. There's muscles that go lengthwise through there, and there's also muscles that go around in kind of like a circular motion. And those muscles work together to kind of create what we call peristalsis, which is like little waves of muscle activity to pass the food along, promote it down the gut, so that it gets to where it needs to go. If there's nothing, so imagine those muscles actually need something to squeeze against to be able to move food through. You think about that. So if there's no fiber there, constipation is going to be worse because there's no bulking agent to try and make the stool more bulky to pass through the body. So the insoluble fiber is going to make the stool bigger. Insoluble fiber has a role as well. Soluble fiber tends to make more of a gel in the stool. So it tends to make it a little bit softer. And so when you combine the two together, you get something that's like firm but soft, firm but like kind of soft. And so it makes it easier for it to like slide through the body and move its way along. So I guess insoluble fiber is going to create more bulking, but the soluble fiber creates like kind of a soft texture. So, but both of them are really important actually, when you think of it that way, they both matter. But hold on, last thing I'll add to that is that usually soluble and insoluble fiber are in foods together. So you don't need to be super worried about, oh, is this food a soluble fiber, is it an insoluble fiber? Just eat more fiber and you're going to get both.
Great. Okay, I have two more questions and then I think we've reached the end. One is how to avoid hiccups. It can be quite a problem at times.
Ooh, that's a good one. So hiccups, I guess it depends on what the cause of the hiccups are. So hiccups happen when a person, so there's a disc-shaped muscle that's like in your sternal area. So your esophagus passes through it into your stomach, and that's called your diaphragm. Your diaphragm helps to regulate your breathing. So when you breathe in, the muscle goes down and the lungs expand and fill with air. And then when you breathe out, the muscle comes up and the air comes out and you exhale. So with what happens with hiccups is that muscle gets out of whack. So it starts to spasm and try to turn itself back into that regular rhythm that it's on, but it's gotten out of whack for whatever reason. One of the reasons that can happen is when people eat too quickly. So if you are, if you're used to eating fairly quickly, or if you're somebody who's pretty busy and you kind of are working on, a lot of times food is like something that people need to get out of the way so that they can get back to what they were doing or get on to their next thing, their appointment or whatever. So when we eat quickly that way, that may have always worked for us before, but then if we've got a neurological condition that affects how our muscles work, that may result in the person getting more hiccups more often. So what we'd want to do is slow down, take our bites slowly so that the body has a chance to like breathe normally throughout the eating process. Drinking a lot of carbonated stuff sometimes too can just get a lot of gas production going in there. You swallow a lot of air, that can promote gas as well. And then the gas can kind of get in there and start to promote like funny breathing and hiccups and stuff. The biggest one I would say is to eat slowly. If it's happening separate from food intake all the time, then it's probably not really related to the food. And then I wouldn't really know what to do about that. That would be a good question for the doctor.
Okay, and finally, what changes would you suggest for dizziness?
Dizziness. Okay. So when it comes to, there can be a couple reasons that are related to nutrition why a person may become dizzy. So the first one that I can think of would be their blood pressure. So sometimes people's blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day. When they stand up real quick after lying down or sitting down, they may notice that they suddenly get a whoosh of dizziness. And so in that case, if it's your blood pressure that's changing, it may be that you need to eat more sodium. So if your diet is really, really low in salt, you may need to increase that a little bit so that your blood pressure is where it needs to be. It might be that you need a medication adjustment as well. So that can sometimes happen. So don't ignore it, get it checked out. The other reason why people can feel dizzy related to nutrition is going to be if their hydration status is too low. So let's say they're not drinking enough, that can be a sign of dehydration, is feeling kind of off and dizzy. So again, don't ignore that either. That'll also come along with feelings of fatigue. So a person will feel kind of tired. They'll feel a little bit less sharp, like they can't concentrate as well. So all of those, especially if you're not urinating regularly through the day, would be a reason to think that maybe your hydration's not quite where it needs to be. The other reason for dizziness that I think is a major one is if the person's not getting enough energy into their body. So we didn't talk really about carbohydrates in this class. Carbohydrates are the other form of energy that we can get. We talked about fats, we talked about protein, and then the other one that gives us energy is carbohydrate. And carbohydrate is really important for kind of just our regular focus. It's the preferred food of the brain. And so if a person is not eating enough carbohydrates, maybe they're struggling to get enough food in at all, and so they just don't get enough carbohydrates. That can also make them feel dizzy if their blood sugar starts to dip and go low. We would also consider that if the person's on certain medications for diabetes, because there might be a chance that their blood sugar is going low because of that. So all of those are things that we could sort out, but it would start with a discussion with your doctor about why they think you might be getting dizzy in the first place. And then if they think that it could be related to your nutrition, then a dietitian visit could be really helpful there.
Okay, well, that's all we have for questions. I'm going to go ahead and stop your screen share.
Okay. Oh, I stopped it.
Yeah, great, thank you. All right, just gonna. Back up and running means I muted myself. Good job.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really interesting. And the questions were very interesting, and I hope that this was helpful for people. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you everybody. Thank you, Dawne, for coming here and being a part of this presentation. Annika, you too. It's been very informative. I hope you all have had a chance to get some questions answered. As Dawne mentioned, we're going to be sharing this presentation. It's being recorded and the slides will be available. They'll be available in the resources section of our website. I know she also mentioned there was a protein and levodopa handout that she has ready. So we'll make sure all of those things are put up on the website probably in the next few days, by next week for sure. I'm going to also reach out to each of you via email, probably tomorrow, just to get your feedback on how you think we did. And also, I just want to encourage you, you heard from Dawne how important it is to exercise, and that's where we come in. So if you are a person who's new here and you haven't had a chance to check out some of our online or on-demand classes, or you'd like to come join us in person, I'm going to be sending an email on ways that you can get involved in those activities with us. We don't bite, we promise. We have a great community here, and we all know, a lot of us know, a lot of you who are here already join us for these things. And so just look for an email from me coming to you shortly. Yeah, I hope everybody has a great day. Stay safe out there, all those Manitobans who are being affected by the snowstorm.
I'm afraid to look out the window now. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's been a little bit of time. We went through the presentation and now we'll see what's out there waiting for us.
my window's full of snow. So anyway, you guys take care. Have a great Easter weekend. Remember, those of you who are in classes with us, we don't have classes on Friday or Monday because of the Easter weekend. So take care. And I'm probably going to be in communication with those of you who come to some of our other classes as well about some of the changes due to the weather situation. So, but just keep moving. Remember, we have those on-demand videos available on our website. I know those of you who signed up for this have been to our website. Go back there, have a poke around, look for our on-demand classes. Of course, if you ever have any questions or have any trouble, myself, Taylor, our team is always here to help you. So just reach out, info@U-TurnPD.org, all of those fun things. I know you know how to get a hold of me, of us, and so we're just happy to answer any questions you have. We will now end it, unless, Taylor, do you have anything you'd like to say, or are you?
To go. Thank you everyone for attending. And if you have any feedback for us or comments on other things you'd like to learn about in future education sessions potentially, please feel free to email us back or reply to Heather's upcoming email.
All right, everyone, take good care, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
That
you.
was terrific, you
Thank
guys.
you very
Thanks
much.
very much for
Yeah.
doing that.
This is great.
Thanks
Very
a lot.
Bye-bye.